you can hear us and see us. Before we get started, just quick hello. I'm joined with Ben and Jamie here from the Strapi team. We're going to talk about a lot of cool topics, but first, let me have you all say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, where and all the cool things that you're doing, and that'll be pretty awesome. And so actually, before we do that though, some of you might have never met Jamie or Ben, so let me just have Ben say quick few words on what you do here on Strapi. Then Jamie, you could go next. So hello, Ben.
Hello. Hi. For anyone who doesn't know me, I think it's been a while since I've done a community call. So my name is Ben. I'm a senior backend developer at Strapi for the DX squad. So I work on the developer experience, trying to make that as nice as possible.
Then awesome to have you. And Jamie?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. This is the first time I've done a community call. But yeah, good to be here and share our experience. I work with Ben on the same team on developer experience, and I've recently been working on some plugin migration stuff going from Strapi v4 to v5, which is something we'll touch on later. And
I'm super excited. Yeah. That's awesome, and glad to have you here. First stream, amazing. It's good. And I'm looking at the chat. We have so many people and folks from everywhere coming from the Olympics, Colombia, Germany, Hong Kong, Hungary, New Hampshire here. Nice. I'm guessing that's Mark. Yeah, it was Mark. I know where New Hampshire is. So many people. Hello from Israel, India, Romania. Oh my goodness. So many people. So hello to all you. I hope Napoli, nice. So this is amazing. I'm so excited. So we're going to jump right into it because we do have a lot of cool things to cover. And I want to just jump right into it, go through the things. Today, we're going to talk about what's new in Strapi land. We're going to talk about Strapi 5 release candidate, Strapi 5 general availability is going to be scheduled for sometime in September, but you are able to try Strapi 5 release candidate. It's awesome. We're going to talk about Plugin CLI with Ben, and then we're going to talk about, 1 second here, later. Okay, sounds good. Sorry, I got distracted a little bit. Then we're going to talk about Strapi 4 to v5 migration, and as always, open to Q&A. So I want to say a quick celebration time to everybody at Strapi. You all did an amazing job making progress on Strapi 5. Strapi 5 release candidates out. So excited. You could check it out now if you haven't. And you have draft and publish, simplify REST API. If you have the enterprise edition, we have a new feature, content history, which is pretty awesome. It's 100 TypeScript, and we're using Vite, which is pretty awesome. So huge shout out to the whole Strapi team for making this possible. Really, really excited. And more importantly, we want the community to start playing with the Strapi release candidate, giving us some feedback while we get ready for the release. So this is pretty awesome. And another shout out I want to give is to PV and our documentation team for constantly making our documentation better and more awesome, even if it's possible. So here I'm showcasing Strapi 5 next docs, which is pretty cool. We have this AI search. And if people worry about AI hallucinates, no. All the data that you see our AI return is things that PV added to our documentation that is only trained on our docs. So I'm testing it out here in this example. I basically asked, what is the difference between entity service and document service? And it pretty much gave me the exact answer I was looking for. It told us, entity service, how it's before, it's going to be replaced with document service. Check out the docs. Really, really amazing. And of course, if you've been living under the rock, probably haven't. We have Strapi Cloud, which is probably the best and the easiest way to deploy your Strapi projects. You get, Google and Git providers. You could share projects with friends you're collaborating with. You could restore from backup. We have templates, all this amazing stuff. But I just want to shout it out. It's a great way to deploy your Strapi project. And what's cool, we do have the dev plan, which starts at $29 a month. You get file storage, data, you get email, and all the cool things that you expect from Strapi. And we'll keep going because I want to make sure that we talk about the most important topics. And last shout out, I swear, if you ever want to chat with us, regardless, say nice things or maybe have constructive criticism, we're on Discord Monday through Friday. You could join us anytime to ask us questions. So we are available for you like in voice chat live. So we would love to have you just to hang out. So without any ado, let's jump into the meat of the topics. The first thing I want to talk about is with Ben about Plugin CLI, and he's going to showcase that new feature and how it's going to help us build plugins much easier in Strapi 5. So Ben, let's take it away.
All right, thanks. Give me just a second. I'll share my screen. There we go. So the plugin SDK is just very similar to the command that you all used in Strapi before for generating plugins, except now it is a standalone command called Strapi SDK plugin, and you run it with npx, or if you prefer yarn, you can use that. And you just use init, same as you did with before, and you can create a plugin. And we just wait for that. It asks all the basic information. So let's enter something in there. Give it a name, description, author name. All of this is optional. And it asks all the questions for what you want to build your plugin to support. Do you want to register it with the admin panel and if you're going to have a UI for your plugin? Register it with the server if you have any backend stuff. If you want to use editor config, ESLint, all the things that make your project nicer to work with. TypeScript, we'll go with yes. And then it builds you your plugin. And so then you just go to it, install all the packages. This will take a minute, always the slowest part of getting started. I'll just let that run.
While this is thinking, I know I'm going to get some flack for this. I like that we still have the JS option for those folks, who.
Yeah, we'll still be supporting JavaScript for quite a while, I believe. not going anywhere, despite what we might want. TypeScript is so nice, but there are a lot of cases where you can't switch or don't want to switch. Okay, so Yarn has finished installing. At that point, you just run build. There's a build script in the plugin package. We'll try that out. And it builds. While you're developing your plugin, you may not want to keep running build. So we also have a watch. So anytime you change a file in your plugin, it will automatically build again. So you don't have to keep typing it.
Oh, that's awesome. That is cool. Nice. So
yeah, that's about it.
That's really, really cool. So here's quick way for you to jumpstart your Strapi 5 plugin. And if you've never built a plugin before, we encourage you to build something cool and share with us as always. And in the past, I've done a little tutorial on how to build a to-do plugin with Strapi 4. I'll do something similar with Strapi 5 because we want to encourage all of you to play around with plugin development because, as we all know, Strapi is super customizable, which allow you to add additional functionality via plugins, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Thanks, Ben, for sharing.
No problem.
And if anybody has any questions, let us know in the chat. But would love to hear what our community has to say. But that is pretty cool. And now, hopefully my slides are showing up well for everybody. Let me know in the screen here that you could see it. But now I want to talk about Strapi 4 to 5 migration. And right now, the upgrade tools, it's still in development. I just want to say that as a caveat. But I did want to kind of as a team here with everybody to share what that process may look like and kind of talk about our initial experience going through this process ourselves and encourage the community to work with us. And so we're going to take a look at an example of Strapifying our first project. And we have this amazing project, Strapi Next Corporate Starter. By the way, I want to thank the community. We are up to 1,000 stars, which is amazing. And I just can't say how excited and happy I am for everybody and for how much use that project has given you as the community. And I want to share the link here because if you want to try this migration process yourself and you kind of want to test drive the process and you don't want to do it yet on your own project, you could literally do it with the Strapi starter to kind of see and get your feet wet with the process. And before we begin, I just want to say the migration process is not magic. It gets you most of the way there, but depending on how much customizable code you have, that will depend from project to project. And so let's take a look at the next step here. So the most important thing, if you're doing the migration process, we have our docs. Now, when you're testing out the migration and you're using the docs as a reference, if you find something or you have a question, definitely let us know. We want to constantly focus on making the docs better. And I'll share the link for the docs so you know where to find it if you want to test out the migration process or kind of see what it looks like. Very important to use the documentation. And here's my project running in Strapi 4. So you could see this is the Strapi Corporate Starter. Notice how I have all my data here and everything is working. So what are the steps? So the first thing is you want to make sure that you try to update from the latest project possible. So for me at the time of making this was 4.25.5, just to make sure that you're starting in a good place. Another thing that you want to make sure that for most folks is you always want to back things up. Back up your project, back up your database. Very, very important. And for this current test, I used SQLite locally. Just kind of, make things just easier for me, but you could have your Postgres database. Just make sure you back everything up. And one thing to consider when making your migration, you might have third-party plugins. You might have your own plugins. And the plugins that you might be using, third-party plugins, they're not made by Strapi team, and maybe that creator hasn't yet updated that plugin to Strapi 5. So what you want to do is remove any plugin that has not been updated or you're not the owner of, just to make the initial process much easier. And we'll talk about plugin migration in a little bit, but basically once you have your Strapi project prepared, you would run the Strapi upgrade tool. And so let's take a look at what that would look like. And here I'm just kind of walking through the steps showing you that when I did the testing, Strapi plugin SEO and the plugin cloud did not have a v5 equivalent yet. So to kind of not run into any issues, I removed those plugins. Then I made sure I removed node modules. I removed all the log files so it doesn't have any issues. And then you run the Strapi upgrade script. So here you do npx @strapi upgrade, and we say @rc because we want to point to the release candidate, and we specify the to flag to say which version we want to say. And we are in the process of updating the docs, and we'll share the information with you when the docs are improved. But currently, for us to test the migration process, we have to specify the version we wanted to upgrade to, rather than just saying like upgrade to major or whatever version. So if you want to follow along, this is the exact command that you need. And once you run the script, you will have something that looks like this. This was basically going to show you all the things that were changed, things that are unchanged, and will auto-update your current local project. And sometimes when you still try to update things, things will break. And I just want to make this call out. I think this bug I'm going to mention is already fixed, but the process, sometimes you will come up with bugs, which is understandable. So in this case, we have a fix here, and I believe this bug might have been fixed already in the latest release. Don't quote me on that yet.
Yeah, that was fixed recently.
Oh, fantastic. And this is why I wanted to make this call out, to show you that when we test things out, sometimes we run into bugs. We actually had a fix here. So if you were to try this earlier before the fix, you would just have to reinstall this package. But I just want to show you that we're actively working on these things. And this was a bug last week when I tried this. It's no longer a bug, which is awesome. And the reason why we want to encourage all of you to go through the migration process is to, if you find something that you run into, is you give us feedback in our Strapi 5 Discord channel, or create a bug in our GitHub, actually probably be a better way of doing it, to help us to improve this process even better. So after I fixed this on my computer, I tried again, and my project started, which was pretty excited. And when I logged into my project, you're going to see that I have all my data that was automatically migrated after running the update script. So the database was migrated to include all the new items. And let me fix the slideshow screen here. And so as you could see in my database, when you take a look, it's using, and I know it's scrolling super fast. I should have been more mindful of this, but you could see that we're using document ID, which is a Strapi 5 thing. So you could see that my database was migrated, which is pretty cool. So now my project is running Strapi 5. So now you're probably wondering, well, Paul, you didn't show us the front end. Your front end, obviously you need to fix things because Strapi 5 has a new flattened API response. So man, we got to battle with our front end. And luckily, we have this flag called Strapi response format flag. And what does it do? You're probably wondering. Well, and I already said, but how about the front end? I'm getting ahead of my things. So what all you do, and huge shout out to Alex here, is in your header response, you just say Strapi response format v4. And even though you're running Strapi 5, you will be returning the format that your front end is used to. And so notice before I add the flag, boom, I add the flag, and there you go. All my front end data on my front end project shows as expected, which is pretty awesome. So you could upgrade your projects in steps. So you could upgrade Strapi 5. You could put this flag to make sure that everything works. Maybe you want to keep it the same way. And then you could incrementally start upgrading your front end to consume the new API response. So I think that is pretty awesome. And if you have any questions, definitely check us out on open office hours, where we will be talking about migration and answering all your questions anytime you have them. That's why we have the open office hours. So stop on by, chat with Derek and I. And in the morning, we have Rich, which is pretty cool. And as I mentioned, we do have the simplify API response. So before, and we heard this when we went from v3 to v4, you're like, what did you do with the API response? And then, we learned from our lessons, and we went back to a more simplified, more flattened response where you don't have that super nested data attribute, data attribute, data attribute. And so here's kind of what the response would look like, which is pretty cool. And did I skip a slide? And so what is the next step for me? Well, the first thing, I want to invite all of you to play around with the migration script upgrade tool and give us feedback. This will help us to make the process even better. For my personal testing, I'm going to do the same migration, but instead of using SQLite, I'm going to actually use a Postgres database. And then I want to kind of see what would this process look like if you already have a project deployed in Strapi Cloud. How can you migrate it? You pull the project locally, you use our data transfer, you pull the data locally to your computer, you run the migration, you test everything, make sure everything works. Once everything works, you could then redeploy your project to Strapi 5. And I want to test the process, see how it works. Are there any roadblocks that I haven't foreseen or we haven't seen as a team, and to help that process. And I'll keep you posted. And of course, I'm going to be committed to making with the team, all the resources to help you to go from Strapi 4 to Strapi 5. And as I mentioned before, open office hours is a great place for you to stop by, give us your feedback, good or bad. We still love to have you to help us make not just Strapi 5 better, but the migration process better. So now I want to talk about Strapi plugin migration and lessons learned. And again, the caveat is the upgrade tool is still in actively being developed. And we love to have the community join in and play around with the tool and give us any feedback about where you think we could improve the tool or where you're running into issues, if you are running into issues. But the most important thing here is to make sure that you are, just trying it out, because your feedback will be really appreciated. So while back 2.5 years ago, I built a to-do plugin, very simple, in Strapi version 4, and we have a tutorial on YouTube how to do that. And one lesson I learned: if you build a plugin and you don't maintain it, it just might be tough when you go into the migration process. So what I wanted to do, a quick call out: if you're a plugin developer, and man, I learned a good lesson. Don't start with an old and unmaintained plugin. It's very important that if you create a plugin, you continue to maintain it. And so I'm going to take the L on that. But with that being said, it was a great learning experience because I got to see what that process would look like. And there's a couple of ways that you could upgrade plugins. And I'll give you my recommendation. But you could, if you have the source code for your plugin in your V4 project, when you run the previous command that I shared earlier, it's going to try to upgrade your plugin as well. Like I mentioned, you do need to have the source code of the plugin. So if you have the plugin living in node modules, it's just not going to work. You need to have the source code of your plugin to be able to write the migration. And CodeMod is going to do most of the work. And where it feels like it needs to give you some pointers, it will add this to-do flag. But there's still going to be things that you will have to manually do. So let's walk through my recommendation first, and then I'll kind of walk you through what that process looked like to me. So if you're migrating from V4 to V5, what I decided to do is upgrade my project first. So I upgraded my corporate starter from V4 to V5. Once my Strapi 5 instance was running without any issues, then I added back my plugin code and I worked on upgrading it. And this is exactly what I recommend. And so the steps is once you have the source code, you would run the migration update code mod. And you would have to make some manual updates that we'll talk about it a little bit. For us, and this is something that we'll probably make automated, but in my front end of my plugin, I did have to manually update imports. And another big call out is we used to have Strapi helper plugin. It was relocated. So certain things that you were expected to do with a helper plugin, I kind of had to, see what changes I had to do. And I'll show you the link to the migration guide that kind of shows you all the differences. Another thing is, since my project was almost 2.5 years old, I had to update the design system imports because things are a little bit different after 2 years. And it wasn't a lot of things to do, but it's still a thing that I wanted to call out. And another one, if you've built plugins in the past, and we used to be able to use a request from the helper plugin, which allows you to make API requests in your plugin to your plugin's backend. Well, now you would use fetch client instead. And in Strapi 5, we are using React Router 6. So if your plugin was using like a React Router 5 standards, you would have to update that as well. And as well as, if you're using entity services, they will be automatically updated to document service via the upgrade. And let me know if there's any questions, if I've talked too fast. And if this is confusing, it's okay. I just want to kind of set the stage give you an outline of what this process looks like so you could try it yourself. So this is in the Strapi 5 project. which has a Strapi v4 plugin in my plugins, in the source plugins folder, the plugins name to do. And so the script is you run npx strapi upgrade at rc, and then you will write code mods run, and then you point to the path of where your plugin resides. Once, if you have any questions of what commands you have, you could run that /h to kind of show you all the helpful things and flags that you have. When you run your plugin, you're going to have this option, and everything is in the green. It's all the things that are already selected. You could click space bar to disable the things. Since I want to check for all those things and migrate all the items, this is what I did. And when you're migrating it, you're going to see all the items that were affected or unchanged in your plugin. So the tool is going to try to do the best thing that it can to migrate your plugin. And after upgrading my plugin, I ran into some errors. And one of the first initial things that I found is that on the admin portion of your plugin, we were using this module that exports. And now, instead of doing it that way, you would need to do the new way of importing things as shown here. And this is probably something that we're going to update and have the upgrade tool handle automatically. But again, this was still in progress. This is me testing the process. This is the portion that I had to do manually. And this is why we want to involve you, the community, to play with the tooling, to give us the feedback, to help us to continue iterate the process. The next thing that I ran into, any place where I used @Strapi helper plugin, since that package was moved and some of the things changed, I kind of had to figure out what were those differences. And I'm going to share a Markdown link here on our GitHub repo that basically outlines all the changes. And I'm sure this will eventually be moved to the docs. Oh, Derek beat me too. Derek, you're too fast. Derek, you're so fast. Read my mind, shared it, boom. But if you look at that doc, it's going to show you all the differences. In my case, there's a couple of little things that I had to migrate. And I'll talk about those later. But first, let me just mention, we're using a Strapi design system and plugins. Again, like I said, my code was very, very old, and some of the things were changed. So when updating certain things, like number one, the things that did exist, I did need to change the imports. Now, before the old ways, you had your Strapi import, and then you would say the / the component that you're using. I always confuse slashes and dashes, but now you just import it from the design system. So that was the easy thing. And this is probably something that maybe code mods could do, just calling out the things that I've experienced, and we could have a conversation about this in Q&A. Next, as you could see, there was a component that I was using, layout, base header layout, counter layout. That was no longer in the design systems. So I kind of had to do my due diligence, what did it do? Basically, I just needed a box with some typography to create my own layout component. So I just settled for using the box and typography component from Strapi Design System. So sometimes you might not have one-to-one change. So what you would do is just based on the components that you have available, you would just recreate that component yourself, which is something I had to do. And then another one is, like I mentioned in my Strapi helper plugin, I was using requests, which is a really old way of doing it. Granted, I made this plugin 2.5 years ago. And as you could see, on the left here, that's the old way of doing it. Request does not exist anymore. And the helper plugin has been moved. So now the recommended approach is you use fetch client, and it lives at Strapi admin. And so these are the minor differences that you could see. But if you are not aware of them, it could be a little bit frustrating at first, like when you're migrating the plugin. This is why we want to share this with you, so you could learn from our experience. And as we continue to improve the tooling, you could give us the feedback. And then another difference is using entity service versus document service. When I ran the code mod, like what you see on the left, that was automatically updated to the screen on the right, where you could see that it uses document service. Sometimes if the code mod is kind of like not sure exactly what you wanted, it will add the to-do note. So I don't have it in this example, but for one of the changes, it literally showed the to-do, and that's because I had to add the document ID. So it basically show you where you need some manual editing. And after all of that was done, did I skip a slide? Maybe it's next. I'm missing a slide, but I have a slide of the migration plugin working. So like everything was updated. I fixed all my bugs. I was able to have my plugin updated to V5 running in my V5. So the migration process was a success with some of the call outs that I gave. And again, we need your help. Like, help us to improve this tool. And so anytime you find an issue in Strapi 5RC or in the plugin upgrading process, please create an issue. You could also, if you're using the beta docs, anytime you find something that could be improved, again, make an issue. Help us make the documentation, the upgrade much better, and try by building cool plugins. And before I finish this up, so Jamie was working on a more advanced migration path, and I wanted to kind of talk to him about what his process looked like and where the CC or like things we could do better or what he has learned. So Jamie, if you want to talk about it a little bit.
Yep, sure. I'll try my best not to reiterate things you said, because that was very thorough on the general process for migrating plugins. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that internally in the developer experience squad, we've started migrating some V4 plugins to V5. We've kind of been starting with the most used plugins in the marketplace, as that's like most useful things that we want to have compatible with V5, and they're generally well-maintained projects as well. So I've started with the CK editor plugin recently, which is something that lets you add a WYSIWYG editor to content types in Strapi, and some of you may have used it in V4. So yeah, as Paul said, plugins can do like a bunch of different things in Strapi, so it can be tricky to generalize, but we're going through this process with plugins to try and lift out as much as we can that is generic across all plugins, basically into code mods or the upgrade tool, and also flagging everything else to be like thoroughly documented to ease the upgrade path as much as possible. So yeah, the automated stuff will get you as far as we can, and then any subsequent actions you need to take will be documented. And yeah, examples with the CK editor mainly came down to the design system and the helper plugin again, like Paul mentioned. There's yeah, I think a lot of the plugin migration process will relate to these packages, and we're ensuring that that is as thoroughly documented as we can. So with the CK editor, one specific thing that it does that might be quite unique to this plugin is that it hooks into the media library of Strapi, so you can pick an image or whatever to put into your WYSIWYG editor. And previously that used a hook, the use library hook from the helper plugin, which it's documented in the migration guide, but now that is something that we export from the main Strapi admin package. So that was one of the migration steps that I had to do to get the CK editor to work with V5. But yeah, that's basically it. The main thing is that I just want to encourage, if you start with a plugin migration from V4 to V5, please just share as much of your experience as you can as you go, and raise bugs if you come across stuff, because like the more use cases we hear about, the better, and the more thorough this will all be, the migration process.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jamie. And yeah, I just wanted to mention we're doing a lot of work, and I just saw Rami gave me a little comment here saying, hey, the layout, you could find it in Strapi admin, whatever the place it's at. So that's one of the things that as we're doing this, things get moved around, and sometimes you're like, hey, this should be documented. So this is one of the call outs, is things that may have been moved from like design systems to a different path. This is something, again, we have to, as a team, that now that we're aware, we could go ahead and document to make these things better. But it only comes from the experience of dogfooding our own stuff and going through the process of migrating. And that's exactly what we're doing. And we just want to extend that invitation to the community to go through the process yourself. And if you are a plugin maintainer, you're building plugins like Derek mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on Discord. If you get stuck, we'll be happy to help you. And that's what Derek said. I'm also happy to help you. But yes, anybody that has made a plugin, our team, like Jamie's doing, he's helping to migrate the CK editor plugin. But we do want to encourage the community to go through the process of migrating your plugins that you built. And if you get stuck, reach out to us and we'll help you in any way that we can. And then if you're looking to try Strapi 5 Next 15 with some Shetsy and UI components, I wanted to, again, try Strapi 5 every chance I get. So I wanted to create like a little sample side project. So this is not, an official, because we do have the Strapi corporate starter that is going to get updated to, Strapi 5 and Strapi 15 as I create the migration guides. But I wanted to create a project for anybody wanting to play with Strapi 5 and Next.js 15. And I just want to share it with all of you. You could, of course, use it, make it your own, give feedback. But I just wanted to kind of show, hey, we have something cool that you could play around with if you wanted to test out Strapi 5 with a project. So that's a great way of doing it. And I think for that, that's the majority of the stuff and topics I had. So for the remainder of the call, let's open it to Q&A. If you have any questions for Ben, Jamie, or I know Ben, you could I know you have a time frame that you have to go, so whenever it's perfectly fine to duck out if we go longer. But
yeah,
if you have any questions, let's do it. There's a lot of people in the chat, almost 100 people. It's amazing. So this is the time to ask questions. If you miss your question, we try not to, but if you do, we always have the open office hours. Yeah, give us your questions, as Derek says. And Bogey asks, hold on, the question's moving too fast. Did I miss it? Dominic asks, sorry, I misread it quickly. Is the documentation AI feature trained on docs content or the code base also? I believe it's trained on all the doc content only, but I will, just doc content for now. And if you're wondering, it's literally the content that our documentation team's creating. So it is up to date. It's only using stuff that's approved by Strapi. So you're not gonna find any random searches. And what's awesome, whenever you use that AI search tool, it literally shows you the reference to the original content where that data came from. So you could get that in depth and check it out. Question from Stygian. Not sure if this was discussed already. Do you have recommendation to upgrade from V4 to V5 when using GraphQL endpoints? For example, endpoints are using GraphQL. So the same feature that I showed you, where you can use for instance, the upgrade process will be the same. You will have your GraphQL endpoints. And if you have a front end that expects the V4 format, you could use that retro flag that I shared earlier in the video, where you could have your Strapi V5 application return the structure in a V4 response that your front end is used to. And that way you could test everything that works. But if you want to use Strapi 5 response, you would have to update your front end to be able to consume it. Another question, I'm going to divert this to Ben. How TypeScript ready is Strapi 5?
It is much further along. We've done a lot of work in V5 to reorganize things so that they make more sense. Very easy to find things now. We've also written a lot of documentation for it to help you use types. We've added some utilities to more easily refer to your types. It's much nicer in V5.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like Anton's comment. Hello, no questions. You're a great team with a big heart. It's because we have the most awesome community. That is why. Let's see any. And if I miss a question, someone could do call out in the chat. By the way, huge shout out to all of our Strapi members inside the chat, answering all these questions before I even get to see them. Amazing.
Yeah, I can answer Henry's question about the document service. That should be type, that is type safe. You just let it know what type the document is, well, it knows what type the document is, and it will catch your mistakes.
Yeah, thank you. Any plans to migrate official CK editor plugin? Is the consensus to just use the unofficial one? This has always been very unclear. So, and what should folks do about plugins and seem to be longer? So one thing I want to say, our Strapi team, we're lean, mean machine working on making Strapify better. And if it's a third-party plugin or something that we don't have ownership, the onus is on those creators to migrate their own plugins. Obviously, we're here for them to help the migration process. And I know Jamie is working on the CK editor plugin upgrade. But again, the idea is for us to support the original creator, to give them all the resources necessary to be able to migrate their own plugins. Since we talk about CK editor, and maybe I'm gonna, get some flack for this. We have our, let's vote. Let's do a live vote. And maybe I'm going to get in trouble for this, and it's okay. We do have our blocks editor in Strapi, and we have limited number of blocks, which we thought would be interesting. And a discussion I had with Remy, and wouldn't be awesome if you could programmatically create your own blocks to add to the Strapi's block editor that you have, and that way you won't need to use like a, you could create a block for your own use case. Maybe, let us know in the chat if you think that would be awesome. Let us know, because I think it's a cool feature. I think Remy thinks it's a cool feature. But let us know if you would like to have that as a feature. That way we could upvote it as a community. But at the same time, that's where we stand with third-party like plugins like CK editor. Let's see, any other questions? Let's see. Yeah, and I think like as Aurelian said, that we were going to release things when they are ready. We're taking our time because we want everybody to have great experience with Strapi 5. And let's see here. Yeah, and as Derek's calling out here, we are working with maintainers of plugins who are not able to continue maintaining them to move them to the community org, by the way, which anybody could join. And Ben, thank you so much for all your time. I know he just jumped off, but I just want to say, see any more questions before we finish up our amazing community call? Yeah, and a great call out by Alex. If you get a chance to test all the typings in release candidate, we're liking that feedback from users in that area. So please let us know. That'll be amazing. And Alex, of course, calling us out as a plugin editor and maintainer. The only real incentive I need is a swag bag. I want a Strapi hoodie. Man, calling us out, Alex. And Bogey, yes, give me. And then Bobby saying we'll be experimenting with migration on our application to V5 soon. Yeah, definitely let us know how it goes. Yeah, and here's like Neville saying, how do you put addresses in blocks, each line in separate paragraphs, so the layout is bad on the front end? I'm assuming you're mentioning the block editor. Yeah, so that's another interesting like concept here, and this is another discussion we could have. So that's one thing that may be a concern at this, not a concern at Strapi team, but if we make the block editor super flexible, then everybody would want to put every possible content into the blocks, which is probably not the best practice when using a headless CMS. For instance, like in Strapi, if I needed an address block, you could have an address component that could represent that data. And, and that's like the thing, like data modeling is very subjective where you have to decide how to do it. And that's one thing that I think if we make the block editor too customizable, then people will be putting every type of content into it, where it should really, you should maybe have a designated, Strapi component for that. But let me know in the chat what your thoughts are. Alex Bennett again. I want conditional fields too. Strapi capable of being used LMS. Amram, really good question, and we'll share more about this. We're actually building a Strapi-powered LMS for our internal learning management system. And so as we make a little bit more progress, we'll share stuff with you publicly because it is going to be open source. But the short answer, yes, Strapi is very capable of being used for LMS. And we'll create more content around it. Will Strapi 5 let us replace the index HTML in the public directory? I'm not sure about that. Any plans for workaround for DZ nesting beyond 2 layers? I believe in Strapi v5, the new recent release, you're able to go more than 2 layers deep. I don't remember what the limit is, but at the same time,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, do you know the limit for that, Jimmy?
Not 100%.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd have to check.
which is okay, because the only reason I say this, again, depending who you talk to, like what I found myself, if I need to go more than 3 levels deep, maybe I should reconsider how I'm structuring my content. But you could go deeper. It's possible now with Strapi v5. I just want to say, and just this conversation around, structuring your data in your Strapi, headless CMS, is that the best way to represent it by having it be very, very deeply nested? Because the deeper you go, I'm going to use a wild example. You go like 20 levels deep, I'm sure there's going to be some performance hit on that. And that's not Strapi, that's just in general. Let's see. And by the way, I think Boogie answering that nesting, yeah, there's also a programmatic way of doing it, but I think it's the recent release in RC, you could go deeper. Yep. Yeah. So for Henry's question, could documentation be added for deployment for Vercel? Strapi can't be deployed on Vercel. You could either self-host it through, services like Render, DigitalOcean, or using Strapi Cloud. Thanks, Derek, for asking the question. We removed the index HTML entirely. Okay. Yep, and I see a lot of you already answered the questions that I'm getting to. I'm going to start from the bottom. Yeah, so. Yeah, and I agree with Alex. If you want super easy Strapi hosting, get Strapi Cloud. And we're working on building, when we started Strapi Cloud, just do a quick call out here, we had to start with like a $99 a month thing because we're an open source company, and Strapi Community Edition is free. When people ask how Strapi make money, it's through offering support to enterprise users, and then also now having a Strapi offering. So we do want to be a profitable company as well. So we started with a high tier, focus more on enterprise users. So developers were like, oh, Strapi Cloud is too expensive. So now we worked on it, and we added the developer plan at $29 a month. By the way, like that includes your file storage, your DB, your email, very easy Strapi deployment. I know when I was working on a project deployed to a different hosting provider, once I added paid, like storage and a database, like the price was like, I was like, I'll just stick with like Strapi Cloud developer plan, just makes sense for me. Yeah, and so and I know that at some point we might even have a better plan than dev plan at $29 a month, but I'm not sure how much I'm able to say publicly. And yeah, and you could host on GCP, you could host it on Amazon. That's the beauty of Strapi. Any node environment, you could host your application there, which is pretty awesome. Yes, I didn't say anything, Derek. I have no idea. And yeah, so I think that's good. Yeah, see, that makes not saying nesting is the best design technique, but we usually, and that makes sense. And yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, you're able to nest components, and again, in the new version, you are definitely able to go more than 2 levels deep, which is pretty awesome. And I'm using MySQL. Can I migrate easily to Postgres? That's a good question. One way I did it, yeah, so I use the DTS feature, but I know some people, like I'm not really good at backend. So for me, writing like a custom migration script, forget about it. So like Derek mentioned, I use DTS where I had using the transfer, or you could like export data, change your database, and re-import the data as well. Again, yeah, like Derek says, you could use export or import, or if you have a other project living somewhere else. Yep. Yeah, Alex, that gives a good point there. It depends how huge your database is, but you have to run a custom script via Bootstrap lifecycle. You can do that as well. Yeah, so yeah, I think we had a lot of good questions, and if you have a questions, if we weren't able to get to it, and actually let me check quickly before we go in the question section, and I see that Derek and Remy did answer them. But if we didn't get to your question right now, what you can do is join us during open office hours, Monday through Friday. Derek and I there at 12:30 p.m. CST time. Jump in. There's also earlier time. I'm very bad with time zones. I don't remember what time the earlier. I have to look, but we have it twice a day, super early for our European folks, and then something that's more reasonable for our US folks. And yeah, so if you have any questions, just join us for open office hours. Otherwise, yeah, thanks to Richard for sharing. Richard is there, doing the earlier time for the EMEA office hours. Yeah, so super cool. I really just want to say a huge thank you to all of our community. You make this project awesome. Again, we love all your feedback, positive or negative. It keeps us grounded, making sure that we could continue to create and make Strapi be the best headless CMS that it already is. And more importantly, it just makes it better for everybody. I also want to thank everybody in the chat, including the Strapi team, especially the Strapi team members, for answering all the hard questions, because I don't have all the answers, believe it or not. And I know Ben jumped off, but huge thanks to Ben, and of course, Jamie, for being here. And with that being said, thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.